A very good afternoon to all of you. We are all set again today for a little information on the diagnostic tests and interpretations that are available today. The reason I say is discussion is because as yet also there is a lot of ambiguity as to what could be the best investigation. So let me quickly together go through what we know today, what is available today, and how would we interpret the results that we get from these tests. So as we all know, the coronaviruses are a large family of enveloped RNA viruses. This is the 7th known coronavirus to infect human beings, and the full genome has already been determined. The major types are two of them, that's the L and the S. Now, this is the pathophysiology which we need to understand before we go into diagnostics. One is that the incubation period ranges from 1 to 14 days. This should be remembered as we go into the RT-PCR. We will say why this is important. An asymptomatic patient is found to have the same viral load compared to the symptomatic. Let's be clear on this. You have one patient that is symptomatic, one that is not. Both could have the same viral load. A PCR could be positive at the same cycle for both of them. High viral loads have been detected in the nasal and throat swabs soon after the symptom onset. And therefore, it is thought that the viral shedding pattern may be similar with that of influenza. It is, of course, known and a lot of publications now that it binds to the angiotensin converting enzyme. That is ACE2 receptor that we call in our regular setups. This is, I think all of us who are with me today know that ICMR has given us 6 criteria. The 6th one has been added, all symptomatic influenza-like illness. I will quickly read this. One is all symptomatic who had international travel, which does not have a lot of hold now. All contacts of laboratory confirmed cases, all symptomatic healthcare workers, all patients with severe acute respiratory illness, asymptomatic direct or high risk contacts of a confirmed case should be tested once between 5 and 14 days of coming in contact. So this is what is required to be tested as per ICMR criteria. For hotspot clusters and in live migration groups, they definitely require testing if there is a positive case. So let's now get back to what we are together today for. How does a diagnostic lab help clinicians in the context of COVID-19? We have 3 different things listed here. One is the molecular test that is readily available as of now, and all of us are working on it. The second is the serology, and the last is other tests, which we will go through when we go through the slides. So when we look at the molecular tests, there are 2 things available today and approved by the ICMR. One is the RT-PCR, and second is a ready platform on GeneXpert Cepheid, on which we routinely do our MTB tests, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The kits are produced, already supplied to the government of India, but as of now, they have just a couple thousands with the government, and they would like to share it in places where RT-PCR is not available with the government. So this is not available as of now for private hospitals or for private laboratories, which would take about 4 to 5 months to become readily available. So one molecular test is on the GeneXpert platform, which has been emergencyly approved by the FDA. The second, which we are doing every day today, is the RT-PCR. Now join me in understanding this. If you can see my slides, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 genes that I've written here, of which the red one, the E that I've written, which is the envelope protein gene of the virus. This is the one that is used for screening tests, as they used to call it. So this is present in all coronaviruses. So this is of course mandatory. Apart from that, the ICMR says you can have any other 2 genes. Let us say you could have a RDRP and the N gene, or you could have the NSP14 and the N gene along with the E gene. So E is the screening, the rest are confirmatories, but you need to do at least 3 genes to call the test positive. When you're doing a direct confirmatory test, as I'm saying, please note, if you have any questions, you have a chat option. So please start putting in your questions on the chat options. So one E gene is compulsory because it is a screening coronavirus gene, and you could test any of the other 2 ones. So this is the basics of the RT-PCR. What happens is, the virus, the first slide that you see, the RNA or the nucleic acid material is extracted along with the internal controls. This is how the process goes on. It is pushed into a totally automated system by which you have the analysis and reporting. If you see this chart, you can see here, this is how the sample is collected. Nasopharyngeal swab in viral transport media, which protects the virus to survive. This is how it is extracted, replicated, read, and the result finally comes out as positive or negative. The RT-PCR usually takes about 3.5 to 4 hours. Lots of essays, lots of people have coming up with new tests, new kits, but validation is a must when we are doing PCRs. So it is still in process. Let's see what best the manufacturers have to offer to us. As of now, what is readily available with private hospitals, private labs is RT-PCR, along with the government also, who is doing tons of RT-PCR tests. The very much discussed tests that we talk about today is the antibody test. I have so many doctors calling me and asking me, "Ke Bhavini main avi gaun, antibody test avi gayi, rapid test avi gayi, antibody test avi gayi." Now, when a test is, or it comes into the market, it is not important to do the test just because you have to do it. It is important to understand what is the role of the test and how is it going to help you in clinical diagnosis. Now, when we talk about antibody tests, by and large, generally, you have 2 of them. It's IgM and IgG. Now, when you say IgM, it reflects a recent infection. And when you say IgG, it reflects that the body has been exposed to that antigen at some time in your lifespan, longer time. So, why has the government asked to do rapid tests, or why are they planning to do rapid tests? The rapid tests are mainly gotten as a strategy for areas which are reporting clusters. You have thousands of them who are reporting a clusters, and one of them has been positive. And you have thousands or hundreds of people around, which has been like 10 days, 20 days. So they say, let's take all their blood and do an antibody test. That might help in knowing how much the progress of infection was in that specific area. So the advisory to start rapid antibody-based test was basically this. As a matter of abundant precaution, all symptomatic ILIs persons are advised home quarantine for 14 days. And after that, they could definitely go in for an antibody test, which would give them evidence whether they did have COVID or they did not have. So I have this graph. If all of you can see it, it's not something that clinicians love to see, but I would like you to just understand what I was talking to you about. The bottom line that you see on the y-axis is the days since the infection, which is from 0 to 35, these many days of infections. Now, when you see the green one, that is the IgM which reflects current infection or nearby, that begins on day 7. So anytime till day 7, and that also is individual. The response of the body is different in different individuals. So if you see this, the peak comes somewhere around 14 days. And then again, it disappears by the 21st day. So please understand this, that IgM against COVID would be anywhere between 7 days to 21 days. Now let's look at the red one, right? So this is the IgG, which begins at 14 days and would go on for a very, very long time to come, right? So the 14 to 21 days, the cursor that I'm showing you, at this point of time, there is a possibility that you would detect the IgG and the IgM. I hope I'm making it clear that when you are doing an antibody test, there is no point of doing a rapid test between 0 to day 7. Even at times till day 10 or day 11, you might not get a positive IgM. This is very similar to a RT-PCR. When we say that the incubation period is from day 1 to day 14, there is all probability that the test is negative on day 4, and then on day 8 the test is positive. This is the antigen. But now when you look at the antibody, the same situation can come in, that if you are doing it on a day 8 or a day 9, depending on the body response and the immune status of the person, there is a possibility that your IgM would be negative. So as clinicians, it is very important for you to have a rough idea as to when there is an increase in the rapid antibody response, because this is eventually what will come in for a long time to come in all your setups, because this is simpler and easy to do. So remember, there is no point of doing it very prematurely in a phase. It could be negative. A repeat in an antibody after 2 days is no issue at all. If you hit somewhere between 14 and 21, you might have both the tests that are positive. Please shoot in your questions if you have on the chat regarding anything that is not clear to you here. So now I just give you, you could just take a snapshot of this if you want, because it is strategy for use of rapid antibody-based blood tests. So mainly recommended for cluster and large migration gatherings. Let us say they could also be symptomatic influenza-like illness. Now, when you do the rapid antibody test, you would have a positive or a negative. If it is positive, it could be a probable COVID-19. Again, as I explained in the previous slide, you have to look at the IgM and the IgG. The M is current, the G is long-term infection probability, which could come up after the 14 days. Now, if the rapid antibody test is negative and you still have a strong clinical suspicion that this could be COVID-19, suppose you are going to take in the future that we are all seeing together is we might have to start work and we might have to start taking patients. Now, what is the security, the safety, and the confidence with which you would want to take the patient inside? So if the patient is negative for rapid antibody testing, but you still have a doubt according to the history of the patient, compromised status of the patient, please go ahead and do an RT-PCR. That is nasopharyngeal swab that we do today. If PCR is not done, the safest thing is to home quarantine for 14 days and do an antibody test after 10 days. As I said, there is a probability it is negative in the earlier phase, but could be positive after 10 days. If your RT-PCR is positive, you know what it is. If it is negative, the possible of non-COVID influenza-like illness is definitely there. Remember, if RT-PCR is negative on day 4 or day 5 and your clinical suspicion is strongly there, radiological evidence is there, do not hesitate or shy away from repeating an RT-PCR. In case of your antibody, if it is negative, right? If PCR is positive, you know it's COVID. If even after day 10 it is negative, then possibly it was a non-COVID influenza-like illness. I hope this is clear. Please shoot up some questions if you feel there is something you don't understand here. So what are the other labs? There are tons of other labs that are available, but please remember, it is not like a GeneXpert test which tells you MTB detected, MTB not detected. All these lab tests are like the ESRs or the Mantox tests that we do, which together are useful. You know, together when you combine them, they are going to help you. A single test is not going to allow you to conclude whether this is COVID or not. So early recognition, as we all know and has been discussed far and wide across the globe, is of course the hemogram, the metabolic profile, the inflammatory markers. Now, when we are talking about this, please understand, we have to take into consideration the history and other comorbid or clinical conditions of the patient which could affect the hemogram. C-reactive protein is an inflammatory marker, so which could increase in tons of conditions as we know in our clinical practice. In hemograms, what do we see? As of now, everybody was very clear that it was leukopenia or lymphopenia. It is surprising that we do see leukocytosis in many cases just now. Now, these leukocytosis could be because of tons of reasons, you know. It could be because of some secondary infection. It could be because of COVID. This is all under study. But just because there is leukocytosis, please do not shy away and say this is not COVID. The probability of leukocytosis still stands. There are elevated liver transaminases, decreased albumin because of renal impairment. C-reactive protein is always elevated for all the COVID-19s that have been studied. So what are all these tests? Oops, that's previous. Okay. So for severe diseases, let's see, you could do a coagulation screen, a serum troponin, a serum procalcitonin PCT, lactate dehydrogenase, creatine kinase, and of course ABG. What are the results usually that you see here? Because of ARDS, you see an elevated D-dimer and a prolonged PT. Because of myositis, you have an elevated serum troponin, elevated serum procalcitonin. Because of, all of us know it's a sepsis marker. Elevated serum lactate dehydrogenase, that is also again myositis. This is also again myositis. ABG may show low partial oxygen pressure. We know when the SpO2 is less than 90. I think that should be all. Before we finish, I just want to talk about IL-6. IL-6, as we know, it regulates the immune response. We have been doing it for quite some time. It is actually a marker of the immune system activation. About 3 times the normal value of IL-6 has been detected in tons of patients who have been positive. So in severe cases of COVID-19, it reflects a poor prognosis, and there are people across the country who have been trying to study this marker. But when the patient first walks in, there is no need to go in for a test which is not required for a walk-in mild symptomatic patient. And thank you for being with us. And I think you should be ready for the evening session now. Thank you very much.